come in, call your friends, call your colleagues. Let's get every one of us seated so we can be ready for the technical sessions. And I bet you it is one that you will enjoy because we have a lot of interesting paper presentations to be delivered, some of which are regulating the practices of engineering professionals through development of codes and standards, regulation, and their enforcement. And that will be taken by Professor Abubakar S. Sambo. We equally have His Royalty, Engineer Otis Oliver Tabugo Anyeji, who will be presenting the paper on repositioning of engineering regulation, monitoring and enforcement, investigation of engineering failures, and prosecution of engineering professionals. And I believe that is one very important paper that we would all want to be attentive to. Also, we have Engineer Dr. Charles Umbelede, FNSE, who will be presenting Sustaining Self-Financing for Effective Engineering Regulation. And then we'll be having a paper by Engineer Dr. Mohammed Nuru Yakubu, FNSE, on repositioning technical and vocational education and training, TVET, in Nigeria. So please, let us make ourselves welcome to this technical, to this plenary section. Sit down, as in no time, the section will commence. Thank you very much.
Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. If you're outside, if you're at the foyer, I would like to invite you back into the hall as we'll be beginning the plenary sessions right away. If you're outside, please come back into the hall. We're beginning the plenary sessions right away. Chairing the plenary session is none other than the President of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Engineer Professor Sadiq Zubair Abubakar, a Fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and a Fellow of the Academy of Engineering. A round of applause for him, please, as he comes to the stage. Mr. Chairman, sir, can we have you up here, please? Thank you. A round of applause for him, please. I'd like to also call up to the fore Engineer Professor Abubakar S. Sambo, OON, NPOM, FNSC, FANG. He'll be presenting a paper on? Okay, he's ably represented here this morning by Dr. Mohammed U. Kaysen. He will be presenting a paper on regulating the practices of engineering professionals through development of codes and standards, regulations, and their enforcement. Next up, I'd like to call up to the fore His Royalty, Engineer Otis Oliver Anyeji, Fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers, Fellow Academy of Engineering. He'll be making a presentation on repositioning of engineering regulation monitoring and enforcement, investigation of engineering failures, and persecution of engineering professionals. Please, would like to have you up, sir. A round of applause for him, please. I'd like to also call up to the fore Engineer Dr. Charles Mbelede, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and he'll be making a presentation on sustaining self-financing for effective engineering regulation. Last up, I'd like to call on Engineer Dr. Mohammed Nuru Yakubu, FNSC, FNG, OON, and he'll be making a presentation on repositioning technical and vocational education and training in Nigeria. A round of applause for him, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome us to the second leg of our first day, or the second day of our assembly. And as it is, we are going to have the plenary session. I would like to refer you to page 21 of the brochure, please. I will appeal to everybody to open page 21 of the brochure to be able to be guided. On that, you will see that we have the list of the presenters that I'm sure most of us knows the caliber of our discussants. And I understand that the last person, Engineer Dr. Muhammad Nura Yakubu, has some urgent trip to make. And in order not to make him miss his engagement and commitment, I will appeal to us to allow him to present first. So I will invite Engineer Dr. Muhammad Nura Yakubu, who all of us know, in fact we call him the father of TVET. I'm sure all of us are aware he was one time the rector of the famous Kaduna Polytechnic, and he was one time the executive secretary of MBTE. He is a retired academia veteran and an advocate of Tibet. And I'm sure when we listen to him, you will see an embodiment of these three keywords: skills, competencies, and proficiencies. Where are we in this country? And I'm very excited to invite him in the presence of Professor Megad, who is his equivalent at the global level. So we are going to discuss not only in Nigerian context, in these aspects of Tibet, but also the global context. Please join me to invite our first speaker in the person of Engineer Dr. Muhammad Nura Yakubu. Sir, I welcome you to take the first shot. You are welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The president of COREN, my friend and brother, distinguished invited guests, fellow engineers. You know, when somebody in Nigeria has retired, it is assumed that he is also tired. But some of us, we have probably retired too early. We still have some energy unspent. And I think it is absolute pleasure to be able to share our experiences and perspectives with respect to technical vocational education and training. An area that really should give us opportunity for somber reflection. I have been in this business for really since 1990. First, as a lecturer in the university in Bauchi, 1982 to 1990. Then a lecturer, academic administrator in Kaduna Polytechnic, MBTE, and a few other places. I even had a small stint, Mr. Chairman, in COREN. I had the opportunity also to serve. I've served as the vice president of COREN for like 3 years, I believe, in the early and mid 2000s. So I've been in this business for some time. And really, as professional engineers, we really need to think very deeply what it is that we have not done well, that the situation with regard to skills and vocational training and education in the country is where it is. I hope my presentation is up there. Please go ahead. As a matter of introduction, before introduction, rather, let me start with a favorite quotation, which is attributed to Albert Einstein, even though it's actually disputed, that the classic definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. This is what we've been doing for the last 50 decades in this country with respect to development of technical and vocational education. And it has been time for decades for real change. And I'm glad that our distinguished colleague is here from Malaysia to also share their perspectives. Because in my sojourn at the Kaduna Polytechnic, at the National Board for Technical Education, we took opportunity to visit Malaysia and look at some of their systems, and they have done extremely well. Our problem, Mr. President, in Nigeria has been inertia. We are all engineers, we know what inertia means. Resistance to change. You can't continue doing what you are doing and think you will change. It's not possible. So, very quickly, because of time, the classic definition that has been accepted by both UNESCO and ILO is that TVET, Technical Vocational Education and Training, refers to the aspects of educational process involving, in addition to general education, the study of technologies and related sciences and the acquisition of practical skills. The emphasis is mind, attitudes, understanding and knowledge relating to occupations in various sectors of economic and social life. Also, in 2004, 2 decades ago, UNESCO declared that since education is considered as the key to effective development strategies, technical and vocational education and training must therefore be the master key that can lead to alleviation of poverty, promotion of peace, conserve the environment, improve the quality of life for all, and help achieve sustainable development. In another document, again, more than a decade ago, the UNESCO stated that technical and vocational education and training is steadily emerging as a winner in the race to the top of global debates and government priorities for education and national development agendas. Another quotation by no less than the Secretary General of OECD on new skills strategy more than 10 years ago. Skills have become the global currency of the 21st century economies. They transform lives and drive economies. Governments must therefore invest effectively in educational skills that people need in tomorrow's world workplace. A decade ago. So you can see we are already in Nigeria playing the catch-up game. People have gone ahead, decades. So let us quickly, oh my God, it looks like the slides are not moving. Or are they? Aha, okay. So what is the current delivery system of TVET in Nigeria? Let's start from the beginning, the national policy on education. National policy on education, which is also dated, because I don't think it's been reviewed for almost a decade, states that the purpose of TVET is A, to provide trained manpower in applied sciences, technology, and business, in particular at craft, advanced craft, and technical levels. B, to provide technical knowledge and vocational skills necessary for agriculture, commercial, and economic development. C, give training and impart the necessary skills to individuals who shall be self-reliant economically. The question to ask ourselves is that, is the NPE itself, with respect to Tibet, is it fit for purpose? Well, I will not answer it, but let's go through the paper presentation. The current system of Tibet is delivered at two levels. The polytechnics, and the purpose of setting up the polytechnics are, one, to provide training and produce, listen to this very carefully, middle and high-level manpower. Middle and high-level manpower in technology, applied science, commerce, and management, in such fields as applied learning that is relevant to the needs of the development of the country. So I say to us that it is clear from the above that the polytechnics are really the principal institutions for delivering TVET at the tertiary level, and therefore key to the development agenda of this country. The implication, obviously, if you refer to the previous slide on national policy on education, that policy needs to be realigned properly with the law. Current developments, next slide please. Current developments. What I have done, we know that in engineering, not only in Nigeria, globally, there are really three members of the family. You have at the apex, you have the professional engineer. At the middle, you have the technicians, really. But here we also have the technologies. At the lower level, you have the craft persons. Now, the technical colleges, we have already settled that really the leading institutions for the provision of higher level technical vocational education are the polytechnics. Now, the bulk of the feedstock to the polytechnics should be the technical colleges. And of course, other science graduates from regular secondary schools. However, I managed to obtain some information, statistics, with respect to public and private schools, secondary schools, I'm talking about secondary schools, senior secondary schools, that's the equivalent of the technical colleges. And I put it up here on the, can you move a little bit? Oh, no, it has to come down. Bring it down, please. But I will summarize. There are a total in this country, as of April this year, 40,258 senior secondary schools. Of that number, 11,277, about 28%, so let's say 30%, are public schools. Another 28,516, or 71%, are private. Look at the technical colleges, technical and vocational schools. Throughout this country, there are 379 of them, 1%. And then the special needs, only 0.2%. So it is very clear from this table, any reform aimed at massive increase in enrollment in formal TVET institutions must start from the technical college level. The reality, however, is sadly, as we have seen, the technical colleges are very short, both in numbers and enrollment. Next slide. Let's quickly look at the enrollments. This is the total enrollment, again, as of April this year, in senior secondary schools in the country. Total is 4.9 million. Male, 2.5 million. Female, approximately 2.5, also 2.4 million. However, the corresponding figures of the technical colleges, when I was putting this paper together, I couldn't even get precise numbers. So I had to do a bit of guesstimate based on the numbers that I had that were authoritative many years ago. And I came to the conclusion that, as I said, in 2009-2010, the enrollment in technical colleges was just a little bit above 74,000. But what does the policy say? The policy, national policy on education with respect to the transition rate from senior secondary to, from junior secondary school, I beg your pardon, to the senior secondary school and the technical colleges should be in the ratio of 60 for the senior secondary school, 20% to the technical colleges, and 10% for vocational training centers and apprenticeship schemes. Based on the MPE and the April 2024 senior school enrollment of at 4.9 million, there should be at least 1.6 million enrolled in technical colleges. The reality as we speak now is that this figure, if you take even 10% of it, at 163,000 would be an optimistic estimation based on historical figures. So the tertiary technical, what about the tertiary technical? Let's go to the enrollment. Look at the universities. Sorry, I'm talking of slide 10. No, go back. Okay, it's all right. Yes, yes, no. Yeah, that's it. I think it's a bit distorted, but I will read out the figures. There are currently 170 universities, both private and public, with an enrollment figure of about 1.9 million. Polytechnics, monotechnics, innovation enterprise institutions, there are 418 of them. Enrollment, a mere 342,000. Next slide. These are just, I am trying to give these statistics because I am building up to an argument. So a little bit patient. Be patient with me. Look at the polytechnics. 145 in the country. Monotechnics, another national diploma awarding bodies, all in all, 418. Look at the technical colleges. Throughout there are even more polytechnics than technical colleges, for goodness sake. And they are supposed to be the feedstock to the polytechnic. That's a problem. 126 technical colleges throughout Nigeria. If you add that to the private vocational enterprise institutions, the IEIs, which were established following the reform of, I believe it was 2007, 2008, you know, that takes up the number to 204. So total, 389 TVET institutions, technical colleges, only 126. Look at the enrollment figures, though. Next slide. Total enrollment figure, as I said earlier, a little over 340,000. Now, the next slide shows what I did was to get data from JAMB for the last 6 years in terms of applicants and what they applied for to indicate to us the real crisis we have. And as engineers, we owe a duty to the country to really look at the problem and provide solutions. Otherwise, as I said, we go back to the Einstein quotation. We are doing the same thing over and over. We've been doing it for decades. We can't move. It can't happen. Look at the particular columns for the universities. 2018 applicants that start for JAMB, 1.6 million. For polytechnics, 69,000. And this figure goes on more or less, it goes up and down, up and down. The admission figures are a little bit better because a lot of the applicants that want to go to university, they have another chance, then they take the second choice of the polytechnic. And as soon as they get the national diploma, what do? They jump to the university. You have a problem in our hands. If you really want it to happen, you have to make it attractive. You can't tell somebody that, ND, HND, the economy needs you, the country loves you, and then you don't treat them like you love them. So they go to somewhere else where you have clearly shown that those you love. It is not enough to say it is important, but you must not only say it, but you must be seen to be doing it. Let's move now to another statistic. The actual number of examinations. No, madam. Mr. Chairman, I will come to you because this one is what we call in Hausa somatabi. This is just the preliminary. I haven't even come to the main issue, but I will jump to the main issue. All I wanted to say here, if you compare the number of those that sit for WAEC, that normally go to the universities mainly, and those that seek for WAEC and NECO is more or less the same, you see that. And then those that sit for NAPTEP, the National Business and Technical Examination Board, done by the NAPTEP in Benin. Look at it. The average for the WAEC and NECO is about 1.5 million, as against NAPTEP, 120,000. And these are supposed to be the feedstock. Your polytechnics. The National Policy on Education targets at least 500,000. So we are not even doing up to 1/4. So I draw these conclusions from the figures. Tibet institutions constitute 1% of the total number of senior secondary schools. That the NTC and MBC examinations for the registration of craft persons with COREN are less than 25% of the target of the National Policy on Education, which in my view even needs to be rehashed entirely. And we have seen from the JAM figures, the average ratio of those looking for placement in the universities, that's at 100 level of the first degree, compared to 100 level of the national diploma, the applicants are at a ratio of 20:1. For every person applying to study in the Polytechnic, there are 20 applying in the university. It is only the mechanism of JAM that makes it 5:1. For every person that is admitted into Polytechnic, 5 are admitted to university. And if you recall, in 1993, the Chief Gray Longe Commission on Education recommended exactly the reverse, meaning that for every student you enroll in the university, there must be 5 in the polytechnics if you want the economy to balance. Very quickly, the next slide. Now we will come to the engineering profession. Look at the figures. As at February this year, on the register of COREN, there are 75,000 registered engineers. Technicians, technologists, there is, okay, this one doesn't have the exact number, but when I worked out the shortage, we had a shortage of over 360,000. The actual number on the register is less than 10,000. Engineering craftsperson is even worse. And compare it with the ILO recommended figures for the engineering industry to operate effectively. There must be a ratio of 1 to 5 to 25. For every professional engineer, there should be 5 technicians, technologies, and 25 craft persons. The shortage, based on the 75,000 we have on the register of engineers, is 1.9 million. And don't forget, we don't even attract anybody to the technical colleges. So it's a real crisis. This is something that, in fact, it should be I don't know, maybe some kind of disaster should be, announced by not just the federal government, but all the state governments. Because, to be honest, this is within the realm of state governments. This is secondary level education, for goodness sake. Secondary level. Next slide. Now, if you do these numbers and you do it in pyramidal structure, You can see on the left, that is the ideal. With the professional engineer at the top, 3%, at the middle, engineering technicians, at the bottom, engineering craft persons. 3% for this balanced engineering industry. For every, when you have 3%, like the 74,000 engineers, you should have 16% engineering technologists, technicians, and 80% as craft persons. What is the reality on the ground? It's upside down. We have 74,000 engineers constituting 85%. We have less than 10,000 constituting 11%. And we have barely 3,000 on the register of COREN. The real problem. That's what I thought I should bring. And there are many, I hope, the organizers will share this online. So maybe in the interest of time, I will quickly jump to what needs to be done, in my opinion. Some of the measures, let's go to slide 20. Some of the measures, very quickly, significantly increase funding, because the reality is that our children, you and I, they don't go to technical colleges. And I want to challenge us here. Please, pardon me. I don't mean to embarrass anybody. How many of us here, can you raise your hands, that have even a single child in a technical college in this country? Please. I don't. I have seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mr. President, there is a problem.
There is. I agree.
You know, it's like we say in Hausa, you want to go to heaven, but you don't want to die. You must die first. It can't happen. So if you really want this country to develop, to have the skills to give our youth, look at the problem with the youth. Look at even the economy itself. Everything is being imported, including labor from our neighboring countries. The French-speaking countries are doing much better in terms of production of skilled manpower at that level. I have plumbing problems in my home. We all have. Where are the plumbers? We don't have. When you build a house, even people to do this grading, the POP, and they're all from our neighboring countries. So what is the problem? Something has to be done. We cannot continue to be doing this thing we've been doing and expect a different outcome. It cannot happen. So very quickly, Mr. Chairman, on slide 23, I have what I call quick wins and low-hanging fruits if we really want to do a reform. The first is that, first, let me draw attention to the rapid growth of private sector in provision of secondary education, where the share of private sector in 3 years, 21, 22, 23, it grew from 60% to now over 70%. And private sector doesn't go into Tibet. They don't go to technical colleges. Technical education, as I'm sure our distinguished guests will confirm, is not a cheap business. Very expensive, but it must be done. If you all want to move to the academic subjects, okay. Then we forget about Tibet, and God knows what happens. In countries with successful Tibet systems, the greater proportion of providers are by far the private sector. So this is where the problem is. Companies, organizations, they are the ones that provide TVET. But here, everybody expects the government to do that. And it's very expensive. But I'm happy the ESMBT was here earlier. They have taken the process of the National Skills Qualifications Framework forward. And we all know that in this country, majority of employment, over 80%, is provided by the informal sector. When you talk about skills, that is why it's happening, but at a low level. So there is something they call recognition within this qualifications framework, recognition of prior learning. What that simply means is that if somebody who operates under a bridge somewhere in Lagos, in Computer Village, he can tear the computer, do whatever. He has the skill. Why can't you recognize that skill? Whether he went to craft school, whether he went to secondary school, whether he went to anywhere, that skill is possessed. So many countries have already been doing this, and it is necessary to formalize them, because when you put them within the formal sector, you now have the possibility of upgrading them, recognizing them, and they can move up to the highest level. Not as it is now. Your mechanic, auto mechanic, knows how to, he's been trained on how to maintain Peugeot 504 or 505. Now we're all talking of brain box. Now there is even cars that are self-driving. Where does he get the skill? So within a short period of time, he becomes unskilled. You have to formalize. So that is first number one. Recognition of prior learning is absolutely critical. Again, I hope our guests will say a word or two on that. Many other African countries, in particular Kenya, they've gone ahead. I think there's a term they use them in Swahili. They call them, in English, they call them hustlers. These people that work, repair our computers and our machines and our phones, they call them hustlers. I've forgotten the Swahili word for it, but they have launched recognition of prior learning, and within the NSQF, National Skills Qualification Framework, which has, in our country, has been approved 9 levels from the basic level, which is like trade test 3, up to level 9, which is PhD equivalent. It's been approved. And I believe up to level 6 has been even incorporated in the federal scheme of service. This is a low-hanging fruit. Even, in fact, I am glad that tomorrow the President will be signing a memorandum of understanding with the Executive Secretary of MBTE to begin to really get COREN on the sector skill councils to get involved. So that's number one.
We really would like you to wind up.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you very much. So I think I will quickly go to the, anyway, so there are so many things I wanted to say, but the argument as I've built up, given what is happening with our polytechnics and the decades of change we've been trying to achieve unsuccessfully. Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, President, we need to empower our polytechnics to award their own Bachelor of Technology degrees. And what you need to do that, they must admit from national diploma. We have evidence. We took it from, we compared admission in a neighboring, in a proximate federal polytechnic with a proximate Federal University of Technology. And during that period of 3-4 years, majority of those that got first and upper second class were those with the ND. So the argument has been made. why not allow the polytechnics to award their own Bachelor of Technology degree through the ND route? 2, or rather 3, with the HND, now this is still discussions. My own personal view is that I think it should be gradually phased out. All the reforms we have tried to do is not working. You allow polytechnics to do the Bachelor of Technology. If you have your HND, instead of going to university to spend another 3 years to get a bachelor's degree, maybe you just do additional top-up 1 year in a polytechnic that awards the BTech, and you get your Bachelor of Technology degree. And you will be a better graduate in engineering than somebody who has gone straight. I can assure you that. Now, Mr. President, the other day I challenged you, but you very cleverly and quietly, and politely, I want to put this thing to all, and there is no better place than this. For 10 years, I was the executive secretary of MBT, an engineer myself, a council member of COREN, vice president COREN. The accountants, they will get somebody who has done HND, allow him to sit for the professional exam, he qualifies, he's chartered. I say, if the accountants are doing it, why can't the engineers do it? What is wrong in allowing somebody who has HND, who now wants to sit for the professional examination of NSE to get registered with COREN, why not allow him to sit for the exam? If he passes, so be it. If he fails, tough luck. Please, I can't understand this. Why is it not happening? Why should the accountants be doing it? We know accounting students in Yaba College of Technology, I took statistics. By the time they do HND2, they already have ICANN, some of them. Why can't it happen with engineers? Why this inertia? Why do we resist change and we say we're engineers? We are the creme de la creme of innovation. Can't happen, Mr. Chairman. I conclude by saying, reminding us, a quotation which is attributed to Albert Einstein: insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Nuraku. We know his passion, his commitment to TVET. And I'm sure the discussion has just begun as far as championing Tibet is concerned from his own perspective. We thank you once again, and please can we give him another round of applause? Again, I would like to invite the next speaker in the person of Engineer Otis Anyeji, His Royalty, another veteran, another administrator of engineering and professionalism in NSC and COREN. He has traversed the professional society from a local level to national level to regional level to continental level. This is one person that has, to his credit, employment of over 400 engineers under him. He was, again, another vice president of COREN, a long-serving council member of COREN. I would like to please join me to invite His Royalty. Now he has added another feather, royalty. He's a chief, he's an OB, he's, he has his own enclave, what we call the empire. But because of his passion of engineering, he's still kicking. And I can bet you, allow him to speak, you will see the passion again. These are our veterans that we are very proud of. Please join me to welcome Engineer Otis Oliver Tabo Mbo Anyeji. He is royalty. You are welcome, sir. Please, sir, don't exceed 30 minutes. Because we want the discussion to take place. The discussions are another cream that we would like to extract a lot of takeaways. You are welcome, sir.
The President of the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, distinguished panelists, the keynote speaker and President of the Malaysian Institute of Engineers, the Vice President of the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, past presidents of COREN here present, fellows and members of the Nigerian Society of Engineers here present, past presidents of NATE, NICET, and the Nigerian Association of Engineering Craftsmen,
Naik.
NAEC, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm supposed to speak on repositioning of ERM and E, Engineering Regulation Monitoring and Enforcement, investigation of engineering failures, prosecution, sanctioning of engineering professionals. And I will just go straight in order to save time. My preamble on this is that engineering professions are vital fields that shape the infrastructure, technology, and innovations that power our modern world. And to ensure safety, reliability, and ethical practices of engineering professions, robust regulatory frameworks and monitoring systems are essential. And the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN, plays a pivotal role in ensuring the integrity and excellence of engineering practices within the country. Through the development of robust standards, codes of practice, and effective regulations, COREN strives to maintain high professional standards, protect public safety, and promote sustainable development. This presentation will provide an exploration of the current engineering regulation, monitoring, and enforcement program and its repositioning. It will also review the critical role of forensic engineering in investigating of engineering failures and the prosecution and sanctioning of erring engineering professionals. The Council, at its 145th Ordinary Council meeting in March 2015, approved the following vision and mission for the parastatal. The vision is to have the highest standards of professionalism in engineering practice in Nigeria. And the mission includes to register and license engineering personnel to practice in both private and public sectors, to develop curriculum for and accredit courses to be offered by institutions training engineering personnel, and others including to register and license engineering firms and make provisions for the control of the practice of engineering in industries. The engineering regulations monitoring. The Council is statutorily mandated by sections 19 and 20 of Engineers Registration etc. Amendment Act number 3, 2018, to establish the Engineering Regulations Monitoring Department. And the latter is charged with the duties of regulation and control and ensuring that engineering is practiced in Nigeria in accordance with the relevant standards and codes of engineering practice in the protection of our national development and the economic investment. By law, the ERM department should be domiciled in the COREN head office for the effective management, supervision, and monitoring of the program. And to this end, the department ought to have offices in all the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. Now, the aims and objectives of the program: to ensure the registration of engineering practitioners, local and expatriates, and firms with COREN. Ensure that engineering is practiced in Nigeria in accordance with the relevant codes of engineering practice in order to protect her development and economic investment. To enforce maintenance of discipline and strict standards of ethics in the practice of engineering profession in Nigeria. To foster the speedy acquisition of all relevant engineering and technological skills by ensuring capacity building and monitoring local content development in the Nigerian engineering industry. There are other objectives also. Now, the strategies for the implementation of the program. From the operational guidelines for the ERM, we find that some of the strategies deal with training and capacity building. For example, monitoring of public and private sector companies and institutions offering engineering training or capable of offering engineering training and education. Monitoring of the deployment and training of NYSC engineering members and supervised industrial training scheme in engineering, SITC trainees. Ensuring capacity building and monitoring of local content development in the Nigerian engineering industry. And there are other strategies that relate to monitoring of practice matters. For example, monitoring of consulting and construction engineering firms' activities. Monitoring and regulation of registration and engineering practice of all engineering practitioners, Nigerians and expatriates. Identifying quacks and unregistered persons and their prosecution in a competent court of law. Now, looking at these practice-oriented strategies, they tend to limit focus on the engineering business categories of consulting and construction, that is contracting. Of course, there are other business categories that ought to come under the radar and which are well highlighted in the regulations for licensing of firms. And these are manufacturing, engineering services, repairs, maintenance, fabrication, vendoring of machineries, equipment, materials. In the case of engineering services, for example, it embodies so many applications in industry that would include laboratory services, inspections, testings, and certifications, logistics management, and so on. Now, these business areas that are not really under focus in the program hold out more prospects and opportunities for engineering practitioners than consulting and construction. In fact, we would say that consulting and construction would be perhaps the least rewarding of all the categories that are recognized under law now and that are open to engineering personnel. Other strategies have to do with monitoring of the application of the regulations. And there are appendices that display these regulations. And if anybody gets my paper, the paper has all the regulations that have been approved so far. And this PowerPoint also has links to the COREN portal where somebody can also access these regulations. So we have monitoring of public and private sectors in the Federation to ensure adherence to the regulation and ensuring that all members of the engineering family deployed therein are registered by COREN. Monitoring of compliance to adherence to licensing of engineering firms, that's Schedule 1. Monitoring full implementation of the regulation on construction industry, Schedule 2. Monitoring full implementation of the regulation on engineering appraisals to valuation, that's Schedule 3. Monitoring full implementation of the regulation on engineering economy, that's Schedule 4. Monitoring full implementation of the regulation on cost engineering, that's Schedule 5. So these should be added, monitoring the implementation for structural engineering, which was recently approved, and marine engineering and naval architecture, and also other regulations that are going to come. In fact, I think that fortuitously, Engineer Wopa Camilla is just sitting in front of me, and I must say that it was when he was registrar that all these regulations were produced. And they were the first regulations passed by COREN since 1972. So we started this business of registration and then later regulation, but we didn't make regulations all along until those made in 2018. Now, collaboration with relevant professional engineering institutions. The Council some time ago prepared a concrete practice manual, and this activity did not follow procedural due process for codes or standards preparation, as individual engineers were picked to produce the manual while excluding relevant professional engineering institutions and business and trade groups that ought to anchor the exercise and constitute the core of the stakeholder structure necessary for consensus building in the development and adoption of codes and standards. Thus, even if the contents of the manual are correct in every material particular, it does not pass the litmus test of consensual adoption by owners and stakeholders in the concrete industry. For avoidance of doubt, the professional engineering institutions relevant in this exercise include the Nigerian Institution of Civil Engineers, the Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers, the Nigerian Institution of Highways and Transportation Engineers, the Nigerian Geotechnical Association, the Nigerian Institution of Water Engineers. Regulations like standards and codes of practice are dynamic documents and so should be dated. The language of some of the regulations sows maize and wild oats simultaneously, and I advise that this be sorted out in camera. The reality of co-regulation. It is also important to recognize that some professional engineering institutions have been chartered by the National Assembly, viz., the Chartered Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers and the Chartered Institute of Power Engineers. There are also other professional regulatory bodies that have bearing with engineering. For example, Computer Professionals Registration Council, Nigerian Council of Food Science and Technology, Institute of Safety Professionals of Nigeria. In addition to these, there are numerous CAC-registered professional engineering institutions, each an authority in a discipline or specialization in engineering. There is need to coordinate with all these bodies to arrive at efficient division of responsibilities and transfer and contact boundaries on the matters of legislations, regulations, codes, orders, and standards. the ERM mode of operation. Now, what we have in the ERM operational guideline is what is on the top. And they are in 5 broad areas: civil, mechanical, chemical, electrical, electronics. And if we start with civil, roads and bridges, railways, aviation, marine building, water resources, and the environment. This actually tends to mix up terminologies because aviation and marine are not strictly civil terminologies. In aviation, is multidisciplinary. And so what applies to civil engineering will be aerodromes. And for aviation, and for marine, what would apply to civil engineering will be ports, harbors, and jetties. Then buildings, as in the one above it, water resources, geotechnical, and tunnels is also supposed to be under focus, and the environment. And then in mechanical, the guidelines look at production, machines and equipment, materials, agriculture. But I am a mechanical engineer, so the president is mechanical, is agric, the registrar is mechanical. So I put special interest in fleshing out the areas that in mechanical engineering that we should focus on in the monitoring of the regulations. And these include production, machines and equipment, automotives, aerospace, ships and boats, building services, energy and power, biomedical, construction stroke erection, manufacturing, pressure systems, safety and reliability, powertrain systems, and tribology. Now, under chemicals, we have petroleum, oil and gas production, allied products, polymer, wood, textile, mining, metallurgy in the operational guidelines. But we all know that the chemical process industries covers thousands of products that can be grouped in selected families of industries, and certainly wood should belong to the agricultural group, not in this group. Then, on electrical stroke electronics, we have power, telecoms, ICT, and AI. If we have a look at the Chartered Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers of Nigeria Act 2023, we will see more specialized subsectors that are recognized under the law. Electronics is surely one of them, lighting is another, same as acoustics, and also building services. And we come to agriculture, and the guidelines say all sectors. Now, all sectors ought to be indicated against the other 4 broad areas of engineering discipline groups. But minimally, the agricultural group should focus on soil and water, farm power and machinery, food, bioresources, forestry, wood, and agro-processing. Now, the listing in the operational guidelines ought to be finalized by professional engineering institutions who have the custody of body of knowledge, whom experience in their various sectors and subsectors, and have the skilled membership basis to do what has to be done in an institutional manner. The administrative framework for ERM is reduced to this organogram. That is how it is, for now. And I'm just drawing our attention to it, that this is what we are operating.
You have 1 minute.
Now, we come to the...
My royalty, please try and wind up.
Well, I'm happy you said you are royalty. You know, they don't rush royalties. Though there is an ERM department domiciled in COREN HQ with offices in all the 36 states of the Federation. And there is the ERM National Technical Committee, which is in COREN headquarters and responsible to the council. It's actually a creation of council. And supposed to formulate policies for the ERM program and activities. And the membership, tenure of the membership is pegged at 3 years. You can see the membership reduced to pictorials. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, it is easy to see that the committee is composed of representatives of professional engineering organizations, government ministries, departments, agencies, engineering affiliates, and trade organizations, none of which has custody of body of knowledge in any engineering discipline or specialization. None is an original developer of standards or codes of practice in any engineering discipline or specialization. Yet, the committee and the department are to do their work in accordance with relevant codes and standards. There is thus an urgent need to recompose the committee with representatives of professional engineering institutions, the owners and custodians of the bodies of knowledge, standards, and codes of practice that form the basis for the ERM program. Government MDAs, engineering affiliates, and business/trade groups that will be required in the work of the committee ought to be co-opted to the committee to complement the representatives of the PEIs, not in displacement of the latter, the owners of the game. Now, ERM Operations Department, I think that's the point one is bringing up here is that we need to introduce a sixth broad disciplinary group, the interdisciplinary emergent disciplines group, comprising engineering appraisal, valuation, cost engineering, engineering economy, environmental, biomedical, artificial intelligence, etc. The case for this group is made more urgent by the fact that 3 of the fields already have initial regulations that need to be operationalized. And it is of utmost importance to strike the right balance between the work expected of expert practitioners in committees, subcommittees, and panels, and the work to be done by bureaucrats in the department. Well, the field office and state technical committees, the comment here is similar to what was said about the NTC. The ERM visitations, we go to enforcement and compliance monitoring. There is primary enforcement and secondary enforcement. We go to the minutes of fake board memberships. Over the years, there's been the issue of false declaration of engineers on board of directors of organizations. And COREN has done something to tackle that by constructing some forms that will capture information that will be used to check the authenticity of those that parade themselves as engineers in boardrooms. Project control forms are also there to provide information through which assessment can be made of the compliance status of organizations and institutions. Now, the proposed repositioning of ERM program. We suggest here an integrative approach to be adopted in directing and managing the program. And after that, adaptive regulations that will form the basis of proactive monitoring of practice of engineering in Nigeria will be developed. And what we mean by integrative approach is here. Adaptive regulations are there. And then all that will lead to proactive monitoring, where it will be easy to implement strategies like predictive analytics and real-time data analysis, from which potential risks and problematic issues can be identified before they manifest, thus enabling early intervention and preventive measures. Next, please. the definition of failure analysis is there, but my experience on this, when I was the Secretary General of NSC, I introduced the Failure Investigation Committee as one of the council committees, and the idea was to underscore the practice opportunities in this field. And the pioneer chairman of that committee, the late engineer Niyi Oguntoye, he pursued that goal of prompting the various disciplines to flesh out the bodies of knowledge needed for failure and accident investigation in their respective areas. Much later, we started hearing of Prevention, Investigation, and Failure Analysis Committee, which has been activism-oriented rather than being practice-oriented. By this, one means that rather than recognize failure investigation as professional work like design or construction supervision, which should be remitted to registered professional firms, branches of professional engineering organizations, and or chapters of professional engineering institutions take matters in their hand as mere social problems. It is important to state here that it is individual engineering practitioners and individual engineering firms that are licensed to practice engineering. Professional engineering organizations with their branches, professional engineering institutions with their chapters, trade/business associations with their branches, and the regulatory bodies with their subordinate offices are not licensed to practice engineering. The regulatory bodies need to emphasize this. Now, processes and protocols for failure investigation, incident reporting, root cause analysis, forensic investigations, and lessons learned. Please, can we move to the next? And the role of forensic engineering in failure investigations involving materials analysis, structural assessments, data analysis, and comprehensive investigations. Sanctions. There is a lot to say about these sanctions, but the important thing is that the Principal Act and the Amendment Act provide sanctions. Section 18 of the Principal Act prescribes what constitute offenses against the law, and Section 18.2, Section 18.3, and so on, give you a glimpse of what constitutes offenses under the law. It may not be exhaustive, but of course, people, when they interact with that, can bring up suggestions on their experiences and how they can be checked, and the council can make a move to upgrade this. And what one has to say here on this page, no, you have jumped something. You jumped something. Now, on this, the next one, yes, at the bottom of it, you may not see it because the heads of the panel are covering it, but there is subsection 8, 9, and 10 in the Principal Act that need to substantiate what constitutes subsections 1, 2, and 3 referred to therein, because they are not in the law. But it's mentioned, there's a reference to a person who contravenes subsection 1 commits an offense. But in the law, there is no subsection 1. There is also no subsection 2. There is no subsection 3. So we need to address that and bring it up for correction. Now, the recommendations here, we have gone through all of them. I distilled all the things we had said earlier to form these recommendations. And for example, that strategies for implementation of ERN should focus on more than just consulting engineering and engineering contracting business categories, and be concerned with all these other ones, particularly these areas that are more lucrative. Because somebody who wants to be a billionaire shouldn't go and become a consultant. If you want to become a billionaire, you should go to vendoring. The vice president of COREN should give us a lecture on that. You want to, be quite wealthy, go to services, engineering services. Open a laboratory and use that and dictate what you are going to charge. Nobody will begin to tell you about scale of fees or whatever there. And so on and so forth. There are all kinds of opportunities that are there. I hope that the council will give an opportunity one day so that we can discuss each of these and what they imply and what opportunities they hold out for all the practitioners, both craftsmen, technologists, technicians, engineers. Now, I think, like I said, that all this we have gone through. And I will just go to the conclusion to say that COREN's efforts in regulating engineering practices through the Engineering Regulations Monitoring Program and the effective enforcement mechanisms for regulating engineering practitioners are vital for maintaining excellence and safeguarding Nigeria's engineering professions, national development, and economic investment. It is therefore imperative that in order to consolidate these significant achievements, much work is still to be done in the development of standards, codes of practice, regulations, and enforcement of the ethics of the profession, including the elimination of quacks in the execution of projects whose participation engender engineering failures in the country. More collaboration amongst regulatory bodies, chartered engineering institutes, professional engineering organizations, professional engineering institutions, governments, and key stakeholders, industry experts, academia, and practitioners is therefore the way forward in realizing the vision behind this year's COREN Engineering Assembly team, regulating engineering profession for shared prosperity in Nigeria. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Your Royalty. I am sure, Royalty used his staff of office to maintain his royalty. And I'm sure we are better off with that. Please join me to thank him very much. We know he cannot do less than this. And I want to tell you that the two presentations so far have formed, rightly so, agenda for COREN to be able to deepen what we have already envisaged is going to come out of this year's assembly. We thank you very much, Your Royalty, our senior brother, our mentor. Thank you so much. I believe you will still have some time if there are some issues after matters arising. Okay, no Allah. Yeah, okay. Let's quickly invite my other senior brother, Engineer Professor Abubakar Sani Sambo. He has traveled out of the country last night, so he has asked, rightly so, his students, who he has mentored, to be able to, address the twin brother of what we have just had. In engineering, we must be very clear with these two terminologies. Code and standards are the foundation that drive ERMs for us to be able to really regulate the engineering profession. And we deliberately pick these two and assign two erudite technocrats and academia to be able to really share with us their thoughts. I'm very sure Professor Sani Sambo, selecting one of his mentees, understand the expectation at this audience. So I would like you to please help me welcome the representative of Professor Sani Sambo to discuss the issue of code and standard. Please stick to the time that has been allotted to the program so that we allow your presentation rather, so that to allow ourselves to have the last speaker. Yeah, you're all right, sir.
Yes. A very good evening to the largest engineering assembly in Africa, the 32nd Engineering Assembly. I'm here to represent Engineer Emeritus Professor Abubakar Sani Sambo, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers, Fellow, Nigerian Academy of Science, Fellow, Solar Energy Society of Nigeria, Fellow, Integral A to Z of F of X, dx. Professor Abubakar Sani Sambo is the President-elect of the Nigerian Academy of Science. His unavoidably absence to attend the African Union's high-level delegation on emerging technology. The topic of today is regulating the practices of engineering professions or professionals through development of codes and standards, regulations, and enforcement. And the content is summarized in 4 captions: introduction, development of standards, codes, regulation, and their enforcement, the way forward of Nigeria, and conclusion. Introduction goes with a brief about the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, which we are all aware of, the laws that enacted COREN, and the major functions of COREN, which are not new to this panel. Another issue is the well-established lecture by His Royal Highness on ERM, that is Engineering Regulation and Monitoring Department, that has been established by Act Number 3 of 2018. As the lecture flows, the professor said, the engineering profession has a set of laws, rules, and regulations to ensure discipline and uniformity of its practitioners. COREN's Code of Conduct and Ethics is a document that has been developed in line with the world's best practices, in line with the World Federation of Engineering Organizations Model Code on Ethics. This is to ensure that all professional activities, as well as engineering personnel's disposition towards colleagues, clients, the public, and the service to the humanity. Accordingly, the Council has developed what we call States Technical Committee and the State Expatriate Monitoring Committees, which were inaugurated to monitor and enforce compliance to the COREN Act. The 3 terms, codes, standards, and regulation, are sometimes used interchangeably and confusingly. As a matter of definition, code is a system of standards relating to the same topic. For instance, electrical code, building code, etc. The issue of standards can be seen as documents that are perceived to establish a minimum performance or standardize such items like test methods, specifications, properties, definitions, practices, and so on. While regulations are documents issued originally by a government or private entity, as a regulation, it has a way of enforcing laws from the scratch. Therefore, there are different levels of standards. We have national levels, regional levels, and international levels. Standards and codes are developed mostly by non-governmental organizations, just like ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. We have so many of them domiciled in different developed countries, like the British Standard Institute, the American Society for Testing and Materials, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, and so on. You will bear me witness that you can see a logo of so many standardizing organizations within the region and offshore. Yes, development of standards, cost regulation, and their enforcement. There are so many, as we mentioned up initial, so many organizations that develop different standards, and we have simplified some examples here. One of them is the ASME Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code, the IEEE, which has a standard for local area network, that is land, and for man as well. With due respect to gender, when we say man, it covers woman, but here it means metropolitan area network. So maybe if you wish to include woman, maybe you introduce wider metropolitan area network. Then we have national electrical codes that develop national fire protection, developed by the National Fire Protection Associations. We have so many of them, like the ISO 9001, which is a quality management system. You know, we have also codes and standards for environment, especially for the manufacturing industries, like the cement industries, the coal-fired power plants, and the rest. These are so many, we can move on. Let's move, yes. Technical committees are responsible for the development of standards. Once the idea of a standard is conceived by a regulating body like COREN or by a national MDA like the Standards Organization of Nigeria, one of the most important operations is to develop or to bring up a technical committee. The standards so developed are expected to meet the interests of all the stakeholders within the area under consideration. So the technical committee will liaise with the public sector and the private sector, which will involve experts and stakeholders in all walks of life regarding that particular standard, as well as all the interest groups, including the consumer organizations. Then there will be technical committee members, the technical committee chair, and the technical secretary. The technical committee members are stakeholders that are interested and nominated by their respective organizations, either from the academia, from the industry, from the consumer organization, non-governmental organization, or professional bodies. Which one of them will be elected as the technical committee chair, and there will be secretariat for handling both technical and administrative activities. Yes, in December 2022, COREN was reported that work has commenced for the development of national standards in the area of construction safety standards and building, or for buildings and civil infrastructure. In general, development standards begins with the identification of the needs for standards, and it follows the stages below. And the stages were initialization, drafting, public inquiry, technical committee formulation, then approval by the regulatory body. By the right-hand side, you see a table picturesque how the elements of a standard are presented, as well as their arrangement in a standard document. Next. So we can see that we have a ring. For instance, we want to regulate engineering profession. What are the basic things that will come into our mind? We know there must be rules, regulations, then laws. These rules, regulations, and laws will be translated into codes of conduct and ethics. From the code of conduct, there will be tremendous benefits like trustworthiness, truthfulness, and respect for human life. Under the ethics, we'll consider the welfare of the professionals as well as the general society, the competence of the professional involved, and the accountability in terms of safety, performance, reliability for machines and others, interchangeability of the components, maybe issue of low noise, low vibration, maybe issue of portability of the components, and what have you. Next. Producing codes from standards involves a structured process to ensure that the codes are robust, enforceable, and aligned with the industry practices and safety requirements. There are some typical steps to be involved, which are listed below: identifying the need for the standard, the formation of technical committee, review of existing standards, and drafting the codes. Next is the public or stakeholders consultation. Once the code is developed, you have to engage stakeholders to have inputs and possible corrections, reviews, addenda, and dedenda. Then there will be serious revision and finalization of the documents. Then we go to approval and adoption or adoption. Sometimes standardizing organizations do adopt standard from sister organizations in different parts of the world. Then the implementation and enforcement comes into being. During the implementation and enforcement, we'll make sure that the public is well educated and people, professionals that are going to enforce the codes and standards must be well trained in that regards. After a while, say a period of 5 years or 10 years as stipulated by a particular body's law, that standard will be reviewed to make sure there is compliance with global best practices. This process ensures that the transition from standards to codes is thorough, inclusive, and result-oriented, as well as enforceable by the law. Next. On the next slide, we have the obligation of engineering practitioners. As engineering practitioners, whether as an engineer, technologist, technician, or a craftsman, we have an obligation. And some of these obligations are: we have obligation to the profession itself, to the engineers and other engineering practitioners, to the public, especially as it concerns the environment. Please, slides are not moving, sir. Yes. Then, as an employer of labor too, you have obligation to your employees and to the society, to the client, as well as to a given contract. On this, I will only stress on one point: obligation to the employee or employer. It is a common phenomenon that, with due respect to the senior engineers and fellows, that most of our fellows and engineers that employ pupil engineers and trainees underpay them, even though the country has what we call minimum wage, which is, although still under code. At this point, the professor wishes to encourage senior engineers and fellows to look into the remuneration of baby pupil engineers as trainees and make sure it's in line with the global best practices. This is what will reduce or minimize to the barest minimum the brain drain that is currently being encountered by the country in the name of JAPA or JAPA syndrome. Producing regulations from codes and standards involves a structured process to ensure that regulations are clear, enforceable, and aligned with the public safety and industrial needs. There are some typical steps involved in producing regulations. Just as we mentioned in the previous point, we have to identify the regulatory need. We form a regulatory body or committee, review relevant codes and standards, then draft the regulations, involve stakeholders through consultation and public hearing, then revision and finalization of the regulatory documents, then the approval and adoption of the document. Implementation and compliance. Here we are trying to stress or buttress how to develop and communicate implementation guidelines to ensure that stakeholders understand how to comply with the new regulations. An example is what is going on in this 32nd Assembly by the Council of the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. And this is also to establish compliance mechanisms, including inspections, reporting requirements, and penalties for non-compliance, as buttressed by our predecessors or previous speakers. Then, in line with that, there is also education and training, monitoring and enforcement, as well as review, periodic review on those regulations. Next, please. The engineering practitioners, engineers, technologists, craftsmen, and technicians must always work hand in glove with codes, regulation, and standards. Here, Prof said, the Engineers' Code of Conduct was compiled to preserve the high ethical standard of engineering profession. It contains provision from the World Federation of Engineering Organization, Code of Conduct model of best practices. It is maintained and enforced by COREN, which we all know, and this has been empowered by the Act E11 of the Law of the Federations of Nigeria 2004 to appoint its investigative panel or investigation panel. And there is punishment or penalty. Offenders of corrupt practices and other related violations, including infraction of COC, are jointly investigated by COREN and ICPC. The Registered Engineers Disciplinary Tribunal acts as a grand jury and considers the report of the investigating panel and the ICPC report. Then there will be hearing, and upon violation of court, hearing are made, then the REDT may take disciplinary action against the violators. This may include, but not limited to, expulsion or suspension, as well as seizure of practice licenses. On the issue of standards and codes, and their use to regulate engineering profession in Nigeria, COREN has done absolutely well. May we have a round of applause to the council? Some of the things or actions done by COREN are producing the COREN Code of Conduct and Ethics document based on the World Federation of Engineering Organization model, inaugurating the State Technical Committee. While there is need for COREN to develop the nation's engineering standard, the COREN's Code of Conduct and Ethics document, which is just about 6 years, should be used for 4 more years before its review commences. Due to the importance of standard and codes in regulating engineering professions in Nigeria, COREN should appoint a standing committee on standards, codes, and regulation. The immediate task of the Standing Committee on Standard Codes and Regulation will be to produce draft catalog of Nigerian engineering standard, which will require, 1, the committee to examine all the major global engineering standards like ISO, American National Standard Institute, BSI, ASME, and so on. All aspects of technological developments, including those in the forefront of knowledge, like the well-established standards producing organizations are already doing, should be considered. The financial requirements of meeting with all engineering professional groups, expert groups, and resource persons, as well as the cost of producing catalogs, both physically and e-version, should be estimated carefully. Browsing through the e-catalogs of ISO, ANSI, BSI, SME, and others clearly provides the message that the production of Nigerian engineering standard is a major project requiring special support from the federal government of Nigeria. So all this bows to the issue of funding. The federal government of Nigeria must have a political will and a funding mechanism for us to align ourselves with the so-called developed countries in terms of courts, standards, and regulation. Funding is the key, and funding is the way. Now, conclusions. Based on the brief presentation made by the professor, it has been concluded here conclusively that COREN and other professional organizations, that is allied organizations like the Nigerian Society of Engineers and all its divisions, they have done extremely well in registering engineering personnel and firms, as well as accreditation of engineering programs in Nigerian universities and polytechnics. Also, the Council and its allied institutions have also done well in producing the Code of Conduct and Ethics documents and the appointment of 2 committees in all states and the FCT for enforcing those documents. The Council is hereby advised by the Professor Emeritus, not by myself, to take steps to ensure that the Code of Conduct is enforced before reviewing it in the next 4 years. There is a special need for the Council and its allied organization to appoint a standing committee on standard codes and regulations and to get it to commence its first assignment, which is to propose a draft Nigerian engineering standard, which will require special financial consideration of Nigerian government because it is a major important project. With the standards produced, the codes can easily be developed to serve as a tool to regulate the nation's engineering professionals for overall sustainable growth and development in our dear nation, Nigeria. This is not minding the act establishing the Standards Organization of Nigeria, which has developed so many Nigerian industrial standards. Please, for the audience clarity, or for the sake of clarification, we are talking of codes, engineering codes and standards, not industrial standards, so that we may not leave the hall in dismay. Because SON has been doing well in NIS, that is Nigerian Industrial Standards. They have different programs, the MANCAP, the SONCAP, and so on. But here, the Council is concerned with the codes of practice by professional engineers, technologists, technicians, and craftsmen. There is a few lists. There are a few lists of bibliographies. Then a thank you slide from the professor, which is email for further consultation, correction, suggestion, or question. By this, Mr. Chairman and the President of the Council, I wish to thank you personally for the opportunity given to me to present this on behalf of the Emeritus Professor, and bearing in mind that as a tradition, given the opportunity to speak while thanking the Chairman, I have to acknowledge the presence of all my teachers and mentors who are here seated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very wonderful representation of our Professor Sani Sambo, who I believe will be very happy to receive feedback from some of us that his mentee, his student, has done very remarkable and has done very well. Please, can we give him another round of applause? Thank you very much, Doctor. I would like to call the last speaker. Again, another well-bred professional colleague who we know has traversed various field of engineering endeavor. Before I invite him, I would like to create the nexus why he has to present the paper assigned to him. I'm sure all of you are aware, last year we informed the Assembly of the decision by the federal government to exercise COREN and other regulatory bodies from the funding regime of the nation. That was a very big challenge, I'm sure, to all the regulatory bodies in this country, including COREN. But it was more so with COREN because before the announcement, the COREN Council had considered what we call the roadmap to rebrand and restructure and reform COREN, be able to respond to the realities of the nation. And so there was a very difficult decision to make. With the imposition of the non-funding, what was before us was, do we continue with the noble initiative which was already approved by the Council of COREN, or do we shelf it up because government has imposed the non-funding? When we went back to the council, it wasn't difficult for the council to give us direction. And the decision was we should proceed. Many of us look at that challenge as an opportunity. And I was very delighted when our keynote speaker in the morning discussed the different regulatory models that we know exist in the world. To some section of COREN Council, and I'm sure even the audience here, that it was good omen that COREN was removed from the funding regime of the government, so that we'll be able to regulate even the government itself, because that is a very good model that our supervisory minister, the Minister of Works, ought to be under our radar to regulate what they do also in the ministry. Now, if you are funded by such an organization, by the federal government, definitely your hands are tied to be able to do that. And of course, we have the converse argument. Some other members said, no, let us continue to enjoy the funding while we play down the cardinal objective of regulating the value chain of engineering, the education, the training, and of course the practice. We surmounted the courage and we proceeded with the reform. And I want to inform the audience here that from January to date, we did not receive a dime from the federal government. But none of our activities stopped, including our salaries, our allowances to our staff. More so, we have, like you heard in the morning, established several regional offices, and we are trying to also establish the remaining 6 state offices in the country. We have also expanded the regulation from essentially 1 sector to 10 sectors. With so many other things, the ERM are going to be replicated in each of the 10 sectors, and the code and standard committees are also going to be replicated in the 10 sectors. And so many other things, you know, the whistleblowing, the whistleblowers, the task force, the investigators, the inspectors training, and all that. So many things that have been developed for the last 1 year. So we had to, in trying to make sure that we don't run faster than our shadow, we had to suggest this topic. How do we, within the context of the challenges, define a new pathway for ourselves for sustaining self-financing for effective engineering regulation. I'm sure you can see the nexus. We want to have effective, wider and deeper regulation, while we need to also develop a model for self-financing. And I want to tell you that the next speaker that I'm going to invite, a friend, a colleague that we have worked, and many of us that have known him in the NSC and other places, who know his dexterity and his capacity in this area that we are assigning him to do this work. Please join me to invite Engineer Dr. Charles Mbelede for him to speak on this very important topic. Dr. Charles.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to stand on the already very well-established protocol. The topic of my paper is Sustaining Self-Financing for Effective Self-Engineering Regulation. Because it's a 38-page document, I've tried to abridge it and I've tried to optimize it. So I'm going to take, we have 7 segments, but I'm going to take the few critical segments because of want of time. So the abstract and introduction is contingent upon the federal government decision to stop financing professional bodies and councils from January 2024, and the need to develop sustainable support for effective engineering regulation. Please move forward to challenges and opportunities for COREN. Despite its significant contributions to regulation of engineering in Nigeria, the decision by the federal government to stop financing regulatory activities by COREN starting from January 2024 has presented a number of challenges to effective regulation and oversight of engineering in the country. The stoppage of federal government funding to COREN means that COREN is now fully responsible for funding its program and activities, including staff salaries, accommodations for staff, headquarters, zonal and regional offices throughout the country, local and international transportation through logistics, office vehicles, cars, loads for staff, printing and publication, advertisements, insurance, and security. COREN will now have to cover its costs for monitoring of engineering practice in Nigeria, approval of engineering courses in universities, and regulating the engineering profession in liaison with other regulatory bodies and councils. The total estimated income for registered engineering practitioners and firms is about 1.3 billion. While the estimated expenditure is about 3 billion, you can see the huge differential. As such, there's a deficit of 1.7 billion, which needs to be generated through effective financing models to supplement the budget. See tables below. Here we have COREN's registered engineering practitioners and firms as at March 2024. Registered engineering practitioners, we have engineers 76,080, technologists 8,674, technicians we have 1,230, craftsmen we have 3,319, expert trades we have 1,667. Firms, sole proprietorship we have 368, partnership we have 218, limited liability firms we have 1,091, corporate ownership we have 4, totaling 1,681. Engineering firms, construction we have 956 firms, services we have 333, fabrications to repairs to maintenance we have 104, manufacturing to production we have 16, vendoring we have 16, totaling 1,428. Moving forward, estimated income. Estimated annual income is 1.3 billion. However, it's vital to note that it's not possible to generate this 1.3 billion at a time because of payment methodology. So if we take about 70% of this annual income of 1.3, we're talking of 910 million. So this is the breakdown of the estimated expenditure. Estimated staff salaries per annum is 337.2 million. Estimated electricity bill per annum is 6 million. Estimated fuel stroke vehicle stroke maintenance per annum is 57.6 million. Estimated accommodation per annum is 31.2 million. Estimated travels, local stroke international per annum is 75.6 million. Estimated hospital stroke welfare stroke pension per annum is 40 million. Life cycle costing comprising generators, cars, miscellaneous items is 40 million. Moving forward, printing, publishing, advert, seals per annum is 20 million. Monitoring vehicles nationwide. Here we are talking of Toyota Hilux car or Toyota Hilux vehicle. This is put as 65 million times 36 states of the country, including Federal Capital Territory. We need 36 numbers for effective monitoring, not for effective, just for a start. And here we are talking of Hilux vehicle, and that's 65 million for 36 states, and this totals to 2.3 billion. Security will have 20 million, staff loans will have 20 million, insurance will have 20 million. These totals will have a grand sum of 3 billion. Moving forward, regulatory bodies play a critical role in promoting sustainable development. In this case, engineering regulatory bodies necessitate adequate financing to forward its capacity building, strengthening the capacity of COREN, both in terms of human resources, technological infrastructure, is essential for enhancing its regulatory effectiveness and efficiency. As a result, terminating federal government funding limits investment in training, professional development, modernization initiatives, which threatens to keep COREN out of touch with evolving engineering practice and emerging regulatory challenges. COREN must enhance its enforcement mechanism, streamline its disciplinary process, and collaborate with relevant stakeholders to promote a culture of compliance and accountability within the profession. Moving forward, consequently, alternative models of financing can ensure compliance with regulatory standards and enforce disciplinary measures against erring practitioners are critical for maintaining public confidence and engineering practice. Please move to current practice in self-financing. There are several different self-financing models in engineering regulation depending on regulatory domains, industry practice, jurisdictional context. These models aim to regulate activities through revenue generated from fees, levies, fines, charges, and other financial mechanisms, rather than relying solely on government appropriations. Moving forward, one of the common self-financing models in engineering regulation is the fee-based system, which entails charging of fees by regulatory bodies to access certain services. Fee-based systems can include certification, permits, licensing, inspection, and testing, with costs varying depending on the size and complexity of the engineering project being regulated. Another self-financing model that COREN can adopt is imposing fines, penalties, or financial sanctions on engineering entities for violating existing regulatory requirements. In this case, regulatory bodies are often authorized to impose fines, penalties, and sanctions as a way of deterring engineering practitioners and firms against non-compliance, as well as a means of generating revenue. The penalties and fines may be calculated based on the severity of violation and the economic benefit to gain from non-compliance. Moving forward, caused by non-compliance, there's also performance-based regulation, which emphasizes on incentivizing desired outcome as opposed to imposing stipulated specific methods or technology by which outcomes should be achieved. In this case, regulatory bodies may establish regulatory framework such as performance standards, targets, or benchmarks that engineering professionals and firms must meet. Consequently, this approach is commonly used in industries such as environmental regulation, energy, transportation, and healthcare to intensify utilities to improve service reliability, increase energy efficiency, and integrate renewable energy. Moving forward, there's also the aspect of regulatory bodies implementing cost recovery mechanism in order to ensure that the costs of regulation are funded by the entities being regulated, as opposed to getting funded by general tax funds. Cost recovery mechanism includes charging annual fees, levies based on the size, revenue, or risk profile of the engineering entity. The total goal is to ensure that those who directly benefit from regulatory oversight bear the burden of participating in engineering regulation. These financial models can help regulatory agencies achieve financial stability. Regulatory bodies can also do cross-subsidy the activities by reallocating revenues generated from regulatory program to fund another program with cost or lower revenue potentials. Cross-subsidization seeks to optimize the financial sustainability of regulatory activities while ensuring affordability, accessibility, and of the regulated entity. For instance, an engineering regulatory body overseeing public utility can implement cross-subsidization to ensure that rural or low-income consumers have access to essential services. In that case, profit from urban or high-consumption areas can help subsidize the cost of extending services to low ones. These collected funds is then distributed to support various programs to ensure universal access to telecommunication services. Some regulatory bodies also receive voluntary contributions or donations from industry stakeholders, professional associations, or other interested parties to support regulatory activities. These contributions can be utilized in funding research, training, education, or outreach programs in the engineering field, or imposing compliance best practices by addressing these challenges. Public-private partnership, PPPs, is a financial model that can involve collaboration between regulatory bodies and private sector entities in order to fund regulatory activities that serve the public. This partnership leverages resources, expertise, and efficiency from public sector while maintaining regulatory oversight and accountability. This financial model may involve outsourcing certain regulatory functions such as inspections or testing to private sector providers in exchange for fees or payments, or even establishing a joint venture to share the cost resources. For example, a regulatory agency may need specialized testing facilities to assess compliance with engineering standards and leverage a private sector expertise and investment through public partnership to manage these facilities. The partner from the private sector will then be tasked with designing, financing, constructing, operating the facility, while the regulatory authority will have the responsibility for ensuring regulatory standards and public objectives are met. Moving forward, these self-financing models can be used individually or in combination, depending on regulatory activities, industry practices, and jurisdictional context. Investing in renewable energy can significantly help reduce its high cost of electricity, enhance sustainability, and demonstrate leadership in innovative energy solutions. A thorough energy audit can be conducted to establish the current electricity demand by the organization, peak load times, and where energy is most consumed. These data can identify the most suitable energy efficiency measures, including renewable energy solutions with potential of energy savings. Some of the efficient technologies that COREN can implement in order to save energy costs are solar and wind energy to power its building facilities, as well as procuring renewable energy solutions across its operations, including electric vehicles and energy-saving lighting systems. Moving forward, by conducting these audits, selecting appropriate technologies, and securing financing, COREN can successfully transmit to a renewable energy and set the pace for other regulatory agencies. Recommendation for sustainable self-financing. Achieving sustainable self-financing in engineering regulation necessitates a combination of policy reforms, institutional challenges, and stakeholders' engagement. This multifaceted strategy entails diversifying revenue streams beyond traditional funding sources like government funding by leveraging public sector partnership, cost recovery mechanism, and other potential revenue like licensing fees, fines and penalties, accreditation fees, and service charges. Diversification of revenue streams could involve soliciting donations from industry stakeholders, seeking grants, or leveraging revenue from ancillary service. In this case, COREN can take steps forward, diversifying its revenue streams beyond government funding by implementing self-financing approach like charging fees for the accreditation of engineering programs and continuous professional development, CPD, implementing a structured professional fees for licensing system, engineers and firms, as well as exploring partnership with private sector entities for delivery services and infrastructure development. Another strategy for generating funds is COREN is establishing a risk pool mechanism or insurance scheme to mitigate financial volatility and stabilize funding for the agency. Moving forward, accordingly, insurance schemes and other risk pooling mechanisms can help spread the financial burden across the board. In this case, COREN can leverage emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, data analytics, and remote sensing to improve regulatory processes, enhance safety standards, and foster sustainable development, shifting towards performance-based regulation where regulatory compliance is tied to outcome as opposed to prescriptive rules, can help move the funding forward. For instance, the regulatory agency could set emission reduction targets without specifying to the regulated entities the means to achieve those reductions. Regulatory entities opt for technologies that work for them, such like enhancing energy, adopting cleaner technologies, or changing operational practice. However, it's critical to be aware that the challenges of some of these self-financing models pertains to limiting COREN's authority to fulfill its regulatory oversight. One of the most significant challenges in risk is the risk of being funded by entities that COREN regulate may cause regulatory to become captured by industry interests. Regulatory capture will undermine the independence and impartiality of COREN, just like the president said a while ago. Before now, we are funded by Federal Ministry of Works and Housing or government. So there's tendency to have what we call regulatory capture. Because they are funding you who pays the piper, they takes the tune. So you are compelled to do some pluses and minuses when you're supposed to look straight. So this makes for impartiality in the decision-making process, and you're able to take a challenging decision. Moving forward, there's need for COREN to plan for commencement of one-year compulsory residence program and oath-taking ceremony for engineering graduates across the country, and introduce continuous professional development CPD certification for renewal of annual license. The residency program can also be called one-year compulsory internship program. Conclusion. COREN is charged with the responsibility of ensuring the safety, quality, and integrity of engineering practice in Nigeria, with its mandate to regulate and control the practice of engineering. COREN strives to uphold professional standards, promote ethical conduct, and advance the interests of the engineering profession and society at large. Engineering activities that the COREN body is in charge of oversight encompasses a wide range of sectors, including construction, transportation, energy, manufacturing, and telecommunication, all of which have profound implications for society, the economy, and the environment. Effective engineering regulation is essential for promoting public safety, managing risk, ensuring quality and reliability, promoting environmental sustainability, fostering economic growth, upholding ethical standards, and facilitating international cooperation. However, COREN is faced with a host of challenges owing to the withdrawal of federal government from funding its council's operations. Some of the challenges include financial instability owing to fluctuating revenue streams, over-relying on fees or fines, limiting investment in capacity, building and resource allocation, and risk regulatory capture and equipment concern. These challenges can be addressed through effective self-financing models that promote accountability and transparency in engineering regulation. Effective self-engineering models in engineering regulation are diverse and can vary based on regulatory objectives, jurisdictional context, and industry practices. Moving forward, there are some common practices in engineering self-financing, which includes fee-based system, fines and penalties, cost recovery mechanism, and private-public partnership financing models. These models aim to regulate activities through revenue generated from fees, fines, charges, or other financial mechanisms, rather than relying on government appropriation. Sustaining self-financing for effective engineering regulation requires a balanced approach that addresses financial challenges while upholding regulatory activities and principles. By diversifying revenue streams, embracing innovative regulatory approaches, enhancing transparency and accountability, and fostering stakeholders' engagement, regulatory bodies can navigate the complexity of self-financing and fulfill their mandates through public safety, promote quality, integrity, and advance sustainable development goals. As such, landscape, COREN must adapt its financial models to mitigate the risk. Finalizing, take advantage of new opportunities by addressing challenges in revenue generation, seizing opportunity, and collaborating with stakeholders. COREN can ensure that self-financing mechanisms set in place remains resilient, equitable, and conducive to regulatory excellence to contribute significantly to Nigeria's sustainable development, industrialization, and international cooperation. By diversifying revenue streams, government funding through implementation of cost recovery mechanism, leveraging public-private sector partnership, improving organizational efficiency, and fostering strong relationship with stakeholders, COREN can ensure that it has its financial objectives. These efforts can collaboratively contribute to a robust regulatory framework in engineering that supports the engineering profession and safeguards public safety. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sasmende. Please, can we give him another round of applause? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that's okay. Okay. Let's quickly invite two gentlemen that can sit for our SY speakers. Engineer Wopa Kamela Maliki, one of the past registrars of COREN. Please, can you come up to represent His Royalty? Engineer Kamela Maliki will aptly substitute for royalty in that regard, we know, in terms of ERM. And I also like to invite one of my seniors, one of my mentors. He came a little late. I know he arrived the country yesterday night in the person of Professor Engineer Mike Paborode, a former Deputy President of COREN as well. Professor Mike, can you come to the podium to also substitute for Dr. Nura Yakubu? He's also one of the key advocates of TVET. I'm sure he's going to do justice to any question that you will ask. So we now have a complete panel. We now have a complete panel so I would like to, because we are really behind time, I would like to beg the audience to please restrict your interventions. But we really have to allow you to respond to, these 4 presentations. And I also like to encourage our august visitor from Malaysia, if you can, we would like you to also intervene in any area you find appropriate. So can we, Vice President, can you please come and assist me to moderate those that will ask questions? Very few questions, please. Please, can you raise your hand? We'll recognize you, and then you make your intervention so that the panelists can respond. Can we start with this side, my right-hand side? Yes? We have, no, let's give you a number. Let's give you a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. 5 on this side. Very well. So please know your number. 1, 2, 3, somewhere here 4, and then 5. Very well. So can we start with number 1? Okay, 6. There's another one there, 6. Yes, number 1, please. Let us know your name, and then you can. Please, do you have mic? Please come to number 1 there. Yeah. Thank you. Please, you direct your question or your intervention to the speaker so that it make it easier for them. Thank you.
Thank you, my president, the panel of judges. My name is Engineer Chidu Gochuku. And my question is regarding the issue of ERM. Most of the presentations here, we are mostly facing civil engineering, mechanical, and rest of them. But considering the situation in terms of environmental sustainability, I didn't hear anything regarding that of environmental management, in the sense that we all know that the environment, which comprises both the air, the soil, and water, are very, very paramount to the environment. So on that note, also, issues of regarding institution of environmental engineers were not also captured. And these are very, very important areas in the society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you. I will answer that. We were not displaying orientation here. No, we didn't discuss any of these disciplines here. What we discussed is code and standard for each discipline, applying to also this area you spoke about. And we also are talking about ERM across the entire disciplines. So this discussion is not discipline-oriented. It's not discipline-specific. I'm sure they will be able to capture that, but I want to clear that. We didn't discuss anything, either civil or chemical, or no, we didn't. It's a generic discussion we're having. Please.
Yes? Again, what the president has just said, the overview given generally cuts across the strata of all disciplines. The methodology for ERM is the same everywhere. So it's just to follow the sequence, the procedures, and methodologies. Thank you.
Yes, number 2.
Thank you very much. I would like to stand on the existing protocol. The name is Engineer Olanrewaju Daudu, Lagos State Minister of Works and Infrastructure. The observation by the distinguished lecturer on technical and vocational education is indeed timely. And I would like to make 2 suggestions. One, I think COREN should probably look into organizing a kind of industrial attachment for some of the graduates of the technical colleges. And we should look back to probably the 63 first term of education that envisaged that after the first 9 years of secondary school education, there should be emphasis on vocational training and skills. And after those 9 years, even if you are going further, there should be some sort of attachment, social attachment of sorts to encourage and even showcase the graduates. And I think equally too, probably COREN too should look into a kind of annual exhibition of the products or the skills of these graduates. Because I think you said most of us should raise our hands if we have students in technical colleges. Nobody, few did, because it's becoming a kind of status symbol of sorts. And people look down on technical colleges. But if we showcase them more and people see the outputs, they see the products, I think it will encourage you. Thank you very much.
Please, can we go to number 3? Somewhere here.
I'm here.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. Starting on the stating protocols. My name is Engineer Balogun. Please, the issue of technical vocational education and training, I actually enjoy what the presenter present. But all these things, we have been coming to COREN, the same thing I've been repeating. But up to today, nothing has changed. I want you as a civil servant, I think if you continue saying this thing up to 4 years, people will still prefer to go for engineering, to go and study engineering university rather than going for HND. Because of what? In civil service, there are a lot of discrepancies. If there's a way COREN can fight it, so that as an HND holder, you can go to the peak of your career in your line. Not somebody stagnating you at any particular or deny you some position because you are HND holder. If this can be achieved, people will be willingly to go for HND because you gain more technical skills in doing HND than going for a normal university. Then number 2, the issue of the technical colleges. I don't know, me, I enjoy the school, I attended something like, not a full technical college, but something related to that. But in these days now, even though you want your children to go to technical colleges, you hardly find anyone in your surroundings. That's why we all end up sending our children to a confessional university. My own suggestion is this: if there is a way that COREN can fight it, meet the government, some of the old confessional centers that we have, if there is a way government can convert them to technical colleges, so that at least if you feel like sending your children to technical colleges, at least you have the one available close by your where you stay, instead of in my local government now, I don't think there's any single technical college there. How do I send my children to technical colleges? And that's the best practice if you want to develop this vocational and technical education in this country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Number 4.
To the group of panelists, fellow engineers, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to have one question, and the second one is...
Who are you?
Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry, I apologize. My name is Afolabi Babari Saolusegun. Engineer. Thank you, sir. The first one is a question based on what was presented to us recently.
Which presenter?
The last presenter that talked about you. Thank you, sir.
Self-financing.
That talked about the area that talked about the COREN trying to do the needful in order to make sure that we take full command of our house. Since the federal government has decided to shift a little bit. So, if we are now going to make opportunity to be going to the organizations, that is, to be checking what they are doing, and then to look at procedures whereby some of them can be penalized. I started thinking about it long time ago. If we do it, it is actually important. It will bring money to COREN. But another idea came to my mind that How can COREN handle this? If some of these organizations that have been sponsoring COREN for a long time and they are still doing it, and because of this kind of procedure that we are bringing in it, they decided to back out. And then the result in not sponsoring COREN. How will the president and his team handle this? That is my question. I know that I have an alternative to it, but I will have to see the COREN president one-on-one on that.
Thank you.
So the second one is on oil and gas. Both COREN and NSC can make a lot of money from oil and gas. We don't need to be producing gas or oil. However, I retired from an international oil and gas organization where I did a project on bringing oil to the surface.
I think, Babarinsa, you should try to package a memo to us. Here, in this case, we want a very snap, concise intervention. I have noted your point. Make a very good memo to COREN leadership, and we'll invite you to discuss. Please don't go into details here.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I will do that.
Very well. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, number 5 or number 6? Number 5, yes.
Permit to stand on the existing protocol, please. My name is Engineer Isaac Alade. Concerning financing of COREN, as the previous speaker just spoke now, I want to add that projects that are being carried out in Nigeria that are failing, we can get money from fines from these companies. Most of them know what they are doing from the beginning. Let them be fined heavily for those things. Roads, buildings, bigger equipment, infrastructures that are failing. Let's start from there. If you have a company and then you carry out a project and it fails, even engineering personnel who are there also, who are being part of it, let me be fined heavily. Then let's start from here. If we don't start this now, our children will abuse us later and say we have failed the nation as engineers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, number 6, another former registrar. Yes.
It's on now. Professor Joseph Odigure, I have 2 points. One is the data that were given to us on registration of engineers, technologies, and by COREN. I don't want us to take those data without knowing that engineers registered in society is per population and not according to relative admission into the university. So if we know that, it simply means that we really don't have the required registered engineers in the COREN that are registered with the COREN as of today. The same thing applies to every other cadre that is being presented to the year. And in the real sense of it, if we relate it to the population of Nigeria, then we have not actually registered 1% of those who are already out of the Nigerian university or polytechnics or any of the training institutions. So that value should be taken very, very carefully. The second point, sir, is that the emphasis on technical schools versus the secondary schools. We can look into a situation whereby we encourage those in secondary school to be part of technical and vocational training. For example, we can make it a practice that if you are graduating from primary school and you intend to enter the secondary school, then you must be enrolled to graduate after 6 years with a skill. That way, we are already encouraging students in secondary school, no matter whether it's technical institution or the normal secondary institution, you will be graduating with a skill. I started that program this year, and I can tell you effectively that those students will graduate with skill. And it doesn't really take much in the real sense of it. Let's look at how we can widen this particular way of drawing more people into the engineering cadre. It doesn't take much in the first instance, because there are so many skill enterprises outside, like the mechanics, the carpenters, who are looking for people to train, and there's nobody for them to train. So they'll be very, very appreciative if we find a way of making secondary school students to acquire some of these skills before they graduate, almost at free cost, at no cost to COREN at all. And lastly, the last speaker was talking of financing. What is the performance indicator for the regions or states to adequately drive mandatory registration every year? This one, I think we can easily do. The process of registration every year, let's create another table or information table that must be filled by participants, such that if you are registering now, you want to pay your annual practicing fee, we ask you which state are you practicing. Stating that one enables us to collect data to know which of the states or region that is actively promoting engineers to go and register. And at the end of the year, we can come up with that table and say, hey, this is the relative contribution of this state in terms of payment of annual practicing fee, and reward those states appropriately. That one definitely will drive the number of people paying their annual practicing fee every year. And lastly, the issue of annual registration. People COREN should go to those people rather than expect those people to come to COREN. We should take registration outside Abuja to other states so that we can actively get people to register. And the other institutions so far, the technologies, the artisans, and the technicians, we must do something about the organizational structure of those bodies to enable them be effective and active in terms of driving registration from other cadre. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Joseph. Now, I think we should allow the panelists to respond so that we have the second round on my left, and then we wind up. I will invite those of the panelists that have questions directed to them to please respond accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to just say a few things to the last man you asked to make some memo. Well, just to let you know that the idea is to think together, plan together, and achieve together. Following the stoppage of the funding by federal government, COREN is compelled. For example, and in particular, you had a while ago when the president said that since January 2024, they have been self-sufficient. They have been able to pay salaries. So what they need to do now is to re-strategize by self-financing, ensuring those methodologies. You mentioned Julius Berger. Julius Berger is not the only people. When we're saying taking grants, it's not only Julius Berger. Take off financing, for example. Let me give you an example. Just outside the banking, the engineering. Heritage Bank's license was removed recently. Why was it removed? It was weak regulation or bad regulation. What was NDIC and CBN doing? That they did not flag their differentials or their deficiency before it was regulated, before it was removed. That removal has put the staffers and the stakeholders at the short end of the stick. So it is to engineering. If you look at engineering regulation, I give you an example. Lamido Sanusi has been saying that we don't know how much that is generated from petroleum barrel, the number of petroleum per day. He has said that consistently, that since he left government, we don't know how much NNPC or how much barrels per day. So COREN can come into this. COREN can regulate the regulator. Why not? We can do private-public methodology where COREN can put people to them to regulate. The same thing with this band A, band B. Who is regulating? If the GENCOs tell you they are giving you band A 20 hours, who is regulating that 20 hours? These are areas COREN can come in. There are several areas. It's just story of minds. There are several areas they can come in and make their money. Thank you.
Professor Mike.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. A number of questions on technical and vocational studies. The paper given by former Executive Secretary of MBTE. I think likely some of the suggestions that are made can add to what was said. Because I know that the Academy of Engineering organized a discussion on engineering education generally in Nigeria, including technical and vocational education. And there is so much concern about the shortage of skills across all the cadre, both for engineers, technicians, and so on. And so the issue of skills that's raised about training is something that will be taken up. In particular, we have a lot of people in the informal sector that can contribute to training. I mean, imparting skills. I mean, the apprenticeship system is something that is endemic to our country that we could work on. So, part of the scheme that I know MBT is working on is to embrace the informal sector so that they can take part in part of the training and make them part of the larger economy so that the benefit will, cascade through the entire system. If you look at the figures that I think Professor Odiguri, former registrar of COREN, had mentioned, well, not so much about whether it's accurate, it's the relative figures. What we hear there shows that we have more engineers than technicians and technologists and craftsmen. What it shows clearly is that there is an inversion of the pyramid in this country. And that is one of the problems that we have. And as somebody said there, that most people, because of our own perception, first, Nigerians generally don't know the value of engineering in all its ramifications. And that's why there are so many quacks wanting to do the job of an engineer. And society allows them. People only cry when buildings crash, when roads collapse. But you don't question who is the person there. Are they the right professionals? But when they fail, you blame the engineer, you blame the technicians. Whereas those jobs could have been handled by quacks who are not registered in these professions. So regulation is also something that we have to hold very dearly. COREN must be ready to step on toes. And as my colleague here has said, we could make even a lot of money by carrying out the function of regulation diligently and ensuring that COREN can survive. But in this country, we believe too much in government. We believe virtually that government must do everything. Even somebody who wants to marry believes that government is the person that should marry his wife for him, rather than individuals taking their lives to their hands. So, COREN and other professional bodies have been forced to take their destiny in their hands. And you can see that we can become more creative and run a better system. Let us learn from the success of other sectors in this country. The Nollywood, the music industry, the fashion industry, they grew out of themselves without government support. But we don't always have to leave government to want to do everything. In fact, when you allow government to want to do everything, that's when we have more problems. The success of the Nigerian film industry today does not owe itself to government effort. It was self-driven. And so you see more creativity and more innovations coming into place. As engineers, technicians in the country, we should be the leaders in innovation and creating things that will change the nature of society. So either it is training of technicians or engineers, we have to be more creative and take our destiny more into our hands. Technical colleges, definitely, we need them. And as I said earlier, we don't value these things. Time it was in this country that we had so many technical colleges. Today, it's not the priority. So, whereas the best of the technicians and technologists were trained in these schools. The same thing in the agri sector. Those that were trained in the old agricultural colleges were more competent, more experienced than a lot of people that we are training today. So we just have to make sure that we rebuild these structures that have served us in the past, that we abandoned to our own peril. And that's why we're having a lot of challenges. The good thing is that COREN and other bodies, working with MBT, Academy of Engineering, and so on, we are trying to work so that we can restructure and get better things in this. But again, there is the inherent attitude of looking down on those who are non-engineers. And that is wrong. Everybody at whatever station you find themselves can be very important in life. If you go to other countries, you walk into the toilet, you see the cleaner. As soon as he finishes his cleaning, he comes out, he's in tie. And he's marching on as if he's not a cleaner. So it is the way you present yourself and the way society accepts. These are long prejudices that needs to be corrected over time. So I think we are happy that the contribution has been made, and COREN will work further on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Engineer Kamila, any intervention?
My President, distinguished members of this audience, I must commend the presentation of His Royalty, Engineer Otis Anyeji. And the only emphasis I want to bring in, which is directed at answering the question on opening up the monitoring. You will notice that throughout the presentation, Engineer Otis didn't mention engineering regulation and design, engineering regulation and supervision, engineering regulation and inspection, engineering regulation and monitoring. The present administration in COREN, they have opened up the practice to 10 sectors. It could be 20, it could be, in fact, worldwide, it could be 600, because engineering fields are now diverse. So the monitoring could extend to those various levels. But the main issue is that the procedure is the same. You will notice when Engineer Otis listed the 5 sectors, he added some other addendums. All those ones are still part of the monitoring, and it should be monitoring. COREN cannot practice engineering. COREN can only monitor engineering, and monitor is regulation. If COREN says an agric engineer should not practice electrical engineering and monitors it, that is the job. So to a large extent, we must emphasize that some of these things are the basic skills as enumerated by Engineer Otis. I want to also say that as it is, as part of financing, some of these things will be done at the level of volunteering, because COREN may not be able to, if you look at the organogram Engineer Otis placed, for COREN to have 6 departments and personnel about 2 per unit in a rural state like Ilori, the engineers may eventually not be doing anything. So because of that, there may be need for our economy now to have volunteers. And the volunteers should only be contented with maybe allowances. COREN may not be able to recruit and retain it, and it is also about self-financing. So to a large extent, we must join by area of your specialty. It is not for a mechanical engineer to go to a bridge project and you say you are monitoring. You notice he said you cannot, COREN should involve the body of knowledge, that is the institutions. Because as presently constituted, some of the institutions are not there. And the institutions, what it means is that when you have a qualified person, a professor in an area, he may be able to make better contribution in the monitoring. And to go or to conclude, COREN presently is trying to, in fact, there's a regulation on ground to assimilate the Nigerian skill qualification framework. So at that point, it may not be based, your performance or your cadre may not be based on your qualification alone. A technician who has some basic requirement and has a mentor and is assessed by a qualified person will be recommended to COREN for upgrade. So all of this is intended to bring in on board all those artisans, roadside artisans, so that there are some artisans who are very good, they can speak English, they know the job, they have the skill. But presently, because they never attended technical school, they are not registered. Going forward, COREN is going to register this kind of people. So, and the more the merrier. If you are able to bring all those people on board, the pyramid may change because all of these people are practicing engineering. Thank you, Mr. Yes.
Thank you.
There's a question. Somebody said, with the existing mindset of Nigerians to qualification, how can COREN assist the government solve this riddle? I mean, the current economic quagmire, which is what I've just said. By the time you have somebody who never went to school, just because he has been mentored and he has acquired the Nigerian skill qualification framework certificate through assessment by assessor, that person will come up and may be registered as a technician, an engineer. Or you have OND person, when he's properly assessed, without going to any academic institution, he will be registered as an engineer. This is what COREN is trying to do in conjunction with MBT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have 1 or 2 persons on this side, please, quickly, so that we give you the opportunity. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, good enough. Please just ask question, no elaboration. Where is the mic? Please, can we give them the mic on this side? Please, we are really against time. I will appeal to those that will recognize 4 of you to just go straight to the point. Here, madam. No, this side.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. President, I stand on the existing protocol. My name is Engineer Ifanyabu. Please, my question is more of a request. These materials, the presentations, is there a way we can get it, probably sent to our email or something?
Yes.
All right.
Go to the next person.
Sorry, I'm not asking questions, sir. Olusoji Ofi is my name. I just want to make some comments on what Dr. Nuru Yakubu said concerning the skilled application for entry into technical stroke vocational training as compared to the university. There's very little COREN can do about that as of now, because taking the decision to go to university or a technical college or polytechnic is purely from either the child or the parents. But then, I believe there is the very need for us to have proper orientation for Nigerians, because we like titles very much. You want to be called engineer, you want to be called professor, you want to be called this and that. And also, the technicians and the technologists and craftsmen here probably need a little bit of canvassing into the secondary schools. I once said to the technicians and the technologists in COREN that a welder could make much more money than a professor if he knows precisely what he's doing.
Benny.
We have to be careful. You see, we are only making a judgment based on what government is doing. What percentage of engineers, technicians, and technologists are employed by government? Most of the people who employ these people are the private sector. Yes. I would rather pay for, in fact, I was going through the airport yesterday. I found that the way some of the tires were laid was extremely poor. And I went through this town today, a very big and beautiful building. The tiles on the walls are already falling down. Nobody's taking care. That's just what I want to say. You need value reorientation for Nigerians. It's not the regulation. You can't regulate it from COREN. Parents have to be told, and the candidates themselves have to know that there is value in using hands. We don't look down on anybody who uses his hand. An engineer who cannot use his hand is not an engineer.
Thank you,
sorry,
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the next person. No, there, go there. Go there now. Madam, which one are you there?
Good evening, President, and I wish to stand on existing protocols. I'll try to be brief. First, getting members to register for COREN. My name is Engineer Chukudi Akpotowo, FNSC. On membership and financing, I think getting people to register will not be much of a big deal. But people want to know what COREN is doing for the engineers. For instance, coming for our AGMs, most times it's so stressful to register, to get your souvenirs. We have some of the worst souvenirs so far. You see our bags, they are not so well, so people are not encouraged to say, okay, why are we even paying for this? So I think that should be looked into. Also, I want to know what COREN is doing to fight for recognition of engineers. For instance, you see medical associations, they fight for the wage and all of those of their members. I've not seen for COREN. So I want to know what they are doing about that. Also, I don't know why we don't have COREN as one of the engineers, as one of the prefixes when you are filling a form. You see doctor, you see barrister, then you see others. So I think it starts from basics like that. Let's be able to have our stamp placed there. Then for funds, I know COREN now has to fund for itself. But while I was trying to register or pay for my company license, I saw that you have to pay for the next year. So for instance, I have to pay for 2025 in 2024. I've never seen it in any other payment. So I don't know if there's something that should be done about that. It's not nice that we have to pay for another year in a previous year. Then lastly, is it possible to have some activities to spice up our sessions? Sometimes I know engineering is a very serious profession, but can we have some sessions, maybe like music in between, or maybe comedy, instead of just having long talks? Because if we have a lot of people here, you also have a lot of ideas, but some people just leave, So let's spice it. Let's come down a bit from this our very serious mode and get people encouraged. Thank you.
The last person behind there. Let's give it to him. Give it to him, the last person. Go ahead, go ahead.
I'm Engineer Olusola Victor from Nigeria Force. My question is very direct. I discovered that most of the contracts in Nigeria, especially the road, are being given to expatriates. They are not patronize the indigenous. I don't know whether it's a result of incompetency or corruption. I want to know the role of the COREN doing concern that so that they can be using their own indigenous on project. Thank you.
Quickly, I will answer you. Go and read Executive Order 5. You will see your answer there in COREN. COREN champion Executive Order 5, and it is essentially compromise. Go and download Executive Order 5, which the last president, the immediate past president, 2018, signed and put into law. You will see the answer on that. Yes, you have been persisting. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, all. I'd like to start on the existing established protocol. I'm Engineer Akim Adetunji from Domalo Engineering, Lagos. I've been hearing of ERL since around 2005, 2006, but I've not seen the monitoring team going down to the lowest level, like some people making blocks. If you see the grade of blocks they make, in fact, is one of the contributors to building collapse in Nigeria. If you see people selling steel, iron rod, and the likes, you will see materials that doesn't have EAT number. They are not traceable, and they will fail tensile tests and the likes. When will COREN start monitoring those people? We have craftsmen, technicians in this family. Maybe some of them that are registered can go down to the lowest level and be monitoring those people. Vulcanizers using pressure gauges that are not calibrated. If you gauge your tire here, they can tell you that 45 psi. If you go to the other one, it can tell you it's 20. If you go to the other one, it can say it's 80. So it has to be regulated. Thank you very much.
Camila, I hope the last person, I hope you'll be here tomorrow. I hope you'll be here tomorrow to witness the inauguration of the Sector Skill Council for Engineering. That will answer your question. Yes, can we return to the panelists for them to respond? Please, let's start with, okay. So we have noted, I would like to, please join me to thank the presenters and the panelists for this excellent session that we have had. The discussion, please, should not stop. We deliberately want to trigger these discussions. Like we've been emphasizing, COREN doesn't organize conferences. We organize assemblies. And assemblies are focused on what are our challenges, what are our issues. So all these questions you are throwing to us, these are the focus. I guarantee you we are going to package some memos that will carry to council that reflect some of your feelings here. And we will also be guided when we are organizing and developing the theme and sub-theme for next year. The assembly is about how do we improve our profession, how do we improve our livelihood within this profession. We don't want to be talking about communique. Here what we have is resolution that we'll implement. So there is a huge difference between NSC conferences and COREN assemblies. Please take this back home. We are not having a conference, so we like a lot of discussion. You can continue the discussion at your state level, at your regional level, at all the levels, until we get answers to a lot of these issues. Once again, I would like to thank the audience for also being patient, for also remaining for this length of time. It's very clear that we have overstayed, and we would like to appreciate you and thank you very much for staying all this while. Once again, please join me to thank our panelists, and I would also like to invite the side table to bring the plaques for the panelists. We have the tradition. We want to also recognize their effort for putting these papers and for presenting and for discussing these subjects that were assigned to them. Can I invite the Vice President to please come and support me to deliver these plaques? I know. Yes, and finally, if you look at our program on page 22, please, I refer you to page 22. We have one item outstanding for the day, and that is what we call the syndicate meeting for the professional associations. Please carry these issues that you have started discussing. Go back to the syndicate. Let NSC, let NATE, NICET, and NAEC, discuss a lot of these issues so that we will see them tomorrow, so that their leaders will present, some of the outcome of the syndication tomorrow at the end of the Engineering Family Forum. With this, I would like to invite, who is the first person?
Okay. Engineer Professor Abubakar Sani Sambu, FNSE. Then we have Engineer Dr. Charles Mbelede, FNSE. His Royalty, Engineer Otis Oliver Tabugo Anyeji, FNSE. Engineer Dr. Muhammad Nuru Yakubu, FNSE. May we now invite Chint, if you're ready. Chint Power and Energy Services Limited. If you're ready, can we quickly have your presentation? Chint or our representative, please. Thank you. Okay.
The syndicate program, you can now say
Here's it.
All right, thank you very much, and we appreciate you for having waited throughout this session. So please, may we now request that all the professional associations go for their syndicate meeting. The Nigerian Society of Engineers, Nigerian Association of Technologists, Engineering, Nigerian Society of Engineering Technicians, and the National Association of Engineering Craftsmen. Thank you very much, and please remember the Engineering Forum tomorrow morning. It begins by 9 a.m. See you all in the morning. Thank you, and have a very wonderful night.